Okay, thank you, Paul. So this morning's session is a little bit different, and what I wanted to do was share with you, beautiful people, something of my journey in recent months as a liberal, middle-class white woman who's always also a climate activist. And this morning I want us to consider racism. And the first thing I want to do is introduce the gorgeous Mama D, who's going to ask us to consider something. So can I ask you to do that, Paul?
You can indeed.
To go about your daily activities.
Right. Okay. Everyone see the screen? Yeah. Oh.
I bring you a consideration, something that you can answer each one to themselves and ongoing. You leave your house each day to go about your daily activities. But every day you encounter the following scene. Across the road, there's a yard, and within the yard you can see and hear a man who is beating a dog relentlessly. You can hear the sound of the dog yelping and barking and whining. Every single day, you encounter this as you leave your home. This dog being beaten, this man beating the dog every time you leave your house. And the question I ask you of this situation, who is being traumatized? Take this question into your breath. The breath that keeps us inspired. The breath that connects. The breath that always is. Before us, within us, and beyond us.
I would like to... Thank you, Paul. So the next bit, and that was also from White Awakening, which was a Plum Village gathering. And the next bit is my kind of journey. So for me, the issue of climate was for many years my exclusive focus. I felt it was the most important work. I didn't consider racism to be my issue anyway. I didn't see myself as racist. I hardly gave it a thought. I didn't even have much interaction with Black people or people of colour. I didn't want to get involved. It was from this place that I and everybody else witnessed the murder of George Floyd, and then I joined the Black Lives Matter group. I began to recognise that I had considered racism as an individual pathology, that I enjoyed white privilege, and I'd done so all of my life and was guilty of white fragility. I recognised that racism is like air pollution. We live in a polluted society, we breathe it in, we're socialised to it, we internalise it, and we don't even notice. I began with Mama D's consideration because I want us all to recognise the trauma that we hold as either victims, perpetrators, or witnesses, our own and that of our ancestors. It seems what is unfinished is reborn. So whilst I feel that my protests and holding actions with Extinction Rebellion, and previous to that, lots of actions with transitions movement around climate and ecological breakdown are very important, they're now only part of my picture. It's also important to feed a vision of the future I would like to see, of system change to create the more beautiful world our hearts know is possible. The future I want is not a future of individualism, of patriarchy and of racism, but one of love, interrelation and community. So just as I stand up for the more than human world, I know that human diversity is as critical to society as biodiversity is to an ecosystem. Without it, there can be no healthy functioning. The concept of Ubuntu resonates. I am because we are, and we are because I am. The inner work, the vertical access described by Joe the other week of mindfulness and meditation, is really important to enable the consciousness change that I think is needed. The support of this group has been invaluable and necessary in this. Mindfulness enables me to have some level of resilience, to pause, to breathe, to recognize my responses sometimes, and to be mindful of race. But I know it's really early days for me and I've got lots of work to do. For those of you that are interested in this work, there are so many good resources out there, so many good podcasts to listen to, so many good books. You know, if anybody wants any of that, that would be, I'm happy to provide that, and I'm sure so is Paul. So the next bit of the presentation is again from White Awakening, and yeah, it speaks for itself, and I think it's quite powerful. Thanks, Paul.
Thanks, Jen. I just thought I'd allow everyone just to sit maybe for a minute, just to absorb what Jen said so far and the trauma exercise at the beginning. Then I'll ring a bell and put the second stage on. And it's good to kind of sit with this, you know, as a meditation. So make sure you're grounded and you're letting the words and the images that sink in. So I'll ring the bell just for a pause, and then I'll play the next section. So the section I'm going to show starts with a reflection led by Rahina, and then there's some images and a beautiful song. So as I say, take this into your own meditation space.
To start by inviting you as part of the process to become aware of your body and the connection with the earth. Just feeling our body and our connection with the earth. Using our eyes and ears to see and hear the connections to the earth around us. Feeling these connections. Also through our feet touching the earth, or our bodies touching elements of the earth. You may wish, as you experience and connect, to close your eyes, take a few deep breaths. Our connection to ourselves, our breath, and the air, and the earth. And as we experience this connection, remind ourselves that every element that is contained in this body is also contained in the earth. This deep connection that we have with the earth. And as we sit here, heeding the call, our heart call, to be part of this event, we acknowledge the ancestors who have arrived in this space with us. Our ancestors are not just historical. They are an embodied part of us, and their energy is in their legacy all around us. As part of this touching, I want to acknowledge the energy of all our indigenous ancestral humanity back to the source, to Hilo Mali, AKA Lucy, her name, which in Afar means she who is special, that symbolizes the special energy that all of us, all beings embody. And as we do this, I want to acknowledge that my feet today are on the path of on part of the earth known as Britain, where ancestral energy from bodies all around the globe are still present in all human, institutional, animal, and plant bodies. And in doing this, I recognize that the harm and suffering experienced here on this portion of Earth space has blown and grown around the world. We are here, we've arrived here to continue what our ancestors could not or were unable to do in both personal and collective healing towards building beloved communities who live in harmony with other beings on this earth. In South Africa, the land or the earth from which I come from, the reconciliation process towards racial healing, as birthed by Bishop Tutu, was built on bearing witness to the truth, to hold in care all that may emerge, to reawaken, to remember, and to reconcile to our true essence of humanness, and to repair, reconnect, and restore to one another, so that the journey towards personal and collective healing can be truly embodied and actioned from. This is in the deepest sense of being, not performative or dualistic. We cannot be human by ourselves.
So can I invite you just to spend a few minutes just focusing on your breath, breathing naturally in, naturally out. Bringing your awareness to your body, sitting in this moment, grounded, present, watching the breath. I'm trying to stay present to whatever's coming up for you from the last 15 minutes. Just turning your mind inwards, observing thoughts and feelings and emotions, and being with those. Any thoughts of ideas or images that are resonating with you right now? Any areas of discomfort, acknowledging those. So in a minute or so, I'm going to invite you to go into breakout meetings again. With five meetings, 5 breakout rooms. So there'll be 3 people in each room. Or maybe just explore each other's responses to these ideas of racism. And reflecting on Jenny's experience. Maybe even exploring the Vedana, the feelings that have arisen just by facing this topic. Reflecting on your own experiences over your lifetime. So we'll spend 15 minutes in breakouts, and when we come back, we'll do a practice. Help us ground ourselves in today's session, after today's session. And then we can have a plenary session at the end before we finish, around about 12, if not before. Yeah, so feel free to turn your videos off if you wish, and just make sure everyone's muted, which you are, so that's good. So I think some of you may be familiar with a practice called breathing through. It's in Joanna's Active Hope book. As I say, I've made a few adjustments to it, and I'm going to record it more or less according to a script, and so it'll be available for anyone that wants it. I'll record it audio as well. Okay. So the first thing to say about the practice is to do it within your capacity. So we'll be kind of revisiting some of the emotions that have been created through just discussing and reflecting on this issue of racism rather. So be gentle with yourself, be kind to yourself as we engage with the meditation. And I encourage you to explore some stretch as well, to explore the reality of this situation and what we are experiencing in our world. And the groups that I dropped into some very good examples of people's personal experience of this topic. So, however difficult or uncomfortable, do your best to be with any reaction, but also be careful not to get engulfed by it. So we start by grounding on the breath. So just attending to your posture to make sure you have, most importantly, a straight back. And you're allowing your body to be at ease, to be relaxed, but also to be alert. We could take 3 deep breaths again, deep into the belly, and exhaling slowly through the lips, as though we're blowing down a long, thin imaginary straw. And then just settling back on the breath. Just breathing in, breathing out naturally. Allowing the breath to do what the breath knows to do. No need to control. And being aware that, like everybody in this virtual session, we're breathing in, breathing out. Breathing in life and knowing that we're all sustained and connected by this common breath. So now I invite you to visualize the breath as a flow of air. It's going in through the nose, down your throat and into your chest. We can continue this by taking the breath into the heart and then flowing out of your heart to reconnect with the larger web of life. One continuous cycle of breath. In through the nose and out through your heart. A continuous loop within our vast connecting breath of life, soft and fluid. So with the body and mind relaxed, but fully awake. Now open your awareness to the suffering that you can see in the world right now. If you wish, you can remember the images and examples that we saw in the film previously. So suffering now, such as the COVID apocalypse in India, or the suffering of our colonial past, created by our ancestors. So we're seeing suffering of humans, also suffering of non-humans, and consequent suffering in the environment, much of it caused by humans. So for people, beings in pain and need, those living in fear and isolation, in prisons and hospitals, care homes, refugee camps, suffering from oppression. Workers, young people who fear for their future. Animals losing their habitats, being used by humans. The destruction of our oceans and trees and natural world. Just try to relax and let these images and thoughts of the countless hardships of our fellow human beings, our animals and our planet, surface in your mind. If you feel a resistance and you feel it's safe for you to do right now, try to drop your defenses and open up to really experience and see whatever suffering is appearing to you from our world at the moment. And now, with a gentle mind and working within our capacity right now, we're going to turn and face these difficulties and breathe in the pain and suffering of the planet and its beings. Let's start by reconnecting with our cycle of breathing. Breathing in through your nose, down your throat and into your chest, and then flowing through your heart to reconnect with the world outside and continue that loop of breathing. Now breathe in the suffering right down to our heart and out again into the world, following the cycle of the breath. You're not trying to fix anything right now, just let it flow through your heart. Don't hang on to that pain, just allow it to pass through your heart. This breathing in of the suffering helps us to learn from it, enhancing our larger collective knowing and understanding. Trust your heart. It is vast and expansive. It can hold the actual universe. Staying present to this breath cycle. If no images or feelings arise and there is only blankness and numbness, know that this is a very normal reaction to what's happening in our world. Or you may experience not so much pain for other beings, but more losses and hurts in your own life. These are also an integral part of the grief of our world. Breathe these through too. Now gently let go of your meditation. Soften any areas that may have tensed. Allow your mind and body to gently be supported by the solid ground beneath you. Okay. Jenny, if you're happy, Jenny, I'd just perhaps might like to invite you back in if you've any kind of reflections or anything you want to add after expertly presenting all that. It was really lovely. So many thanks for that. And I've already had at least one request to hear more from you. So there you go. Over to you before we go into a plenary.
Just to say, I found that the meditation you led then very moving and really helpful. I feel like this work means you have to keep doing that, you know, and I feel it for obviously environment, but in terms of Black Lives Matter, it's the same sort of process, and yeah, mindfulness is hugely helpful. And just want to thank everyone for being here and listening to it. Thank you. And I may have been really quick, but that's because I was nervous, so sorry.
It was quick and very effective, Jenny. So I've had some very nice, I went around the rooms actually, and there's been some very nice compliments about the power of it actually. So I want to personally thank you for that, because I found it deeply moving. Can I just open up for some comments, reflections, questions? Anybody want to go?
suppose on one level, it's the what next.
Yeah. Yeah. You want to say, Wendy? Because I'm sure you would have some ideas what might be next.
I came up in the breakout group I was in, and I think I'm still at the point of educating myself, even though I feel that, I have read lots of books, listened to so many summits, conferences, webcasts, or so many things. But I think until it's clear what the next step is, I still need to do what Jan Wellis says, which is, educate yourself. And it isn't clear yet. I know I don't want it to just stay in my head and in my particular social group and whatever. I mean, I think I'm leading about my third or fourth Moors, me and white supremacy, Lila say, book circles at the moment. And each time, I mean, I know that there are many other books that have, a different approach, but that was the kind of one of the ways to really start going inwards, this inner work. What does it gypsy travelers, when I think of all this kind of white supremacy, more clarity about.
Yeah, I missed a bit of that because you blipped out on mine, Wendy, but I got the gist of it. I've certainly, what you said about the educate ourselves, and it starts with us, what we the white race do, what we've got our stuff to sort out. I agree with Dan. You had your hand up.
Yeah, early morning here where I live by the river in Frome the other day, there was a terrible scream, and it could have been just foxes doing their mating stuff because they make some extraordinary noises, but it sounded like they'd killed something which then was dying a rather agonizing death. And it set me both reflecting on the terror that wild creatures must feel at night when they're completely exposed, and all they can do is find a quiet corner somewhere, but predators may or may not find them and they can do nothing else. But also the ruthlessness and the decisive, what I can't think of the word, bulldozerness of the whole human species, that through our history we have pushed everything else aside, eliminated everything in order to create this safety and comfort that we live in. We're all sitting in a room, and by definition the trees that were growing out of the earth where our room is now are gone, and we've done that, and then all of these discriminatory, inequality, expediency, exploitation issues are a face of this ruthless history that we have as a species, alongside our tremendous ability for kindness. But it's pretty difficult to balance. So yeah.
Yeah, thanks for that, Dan. Yeah. Anyone else want to contribute or respond to what we've heard? Yes, Annabelle. Thank you.
Yeah, I just wanted to say kind of generally I've really appreciated this session and the way it's brought in really inspirational pieces of video, Jen's personal journey and the way she presented that, and the opportunity for us to reflect and it's and then the meditation which went really deep, and I just feel it's such an amazing kind of a way to go into this issue of racism. It's so much more than a intellectual activity. going to this subject. And I think we've really, for me, it's brought together different ways, means of really engaging and feeling in my body and in my feelings. So I want to thank Jen very much for bringing it, and you, Paul, holding it, and everyone.
Thanks, Annabelle. That's very helpful. I mean, one thing that I don't think anyone else has a view on this, but I'm learning day by day on this. It's just, and it's not easy. But I think Wendy mentioned it. My kind of breakthrough was studying breakthrough, but my entree was the Black Lives Matter group studying, me and white supremacy. We're doing a mindfulness of race one, and there are a number of groups in Frome doing this. And I definitely think if anybody's sort of thinking, well, how do I engage to start with, that's a good place to, some people, friends or whatever, just to start studying one of a range of books, all of which can help educate. And also just, last week we had an anti-racism. There's a bit of issue in the Buddhist circles about using but anti-racism workshop, and just the educational stuff about, I did history at school, but I didn't know any of this stuff in the way that it's presented. And like Jan Willis, somebody mentioned, I think it might be Wendy, Jan Willis said, educate. What can we white people do, Jan? She's a Black Buddhist teacher, and she says, just get educated. And I think it's so important, just find out what the facts are. Found that really, really helpful, is being helpful. And the other thing that's come in for me, and I'd be interested in anybody else, what they feel about this. It was a new word to me, and I'll catch you in a second, Maurice, I got you. It was a new word to me, it was intersectionality. And I heard this word being bandied around, and I don't know what that is, but now I understand it is, that it isn't just about, prejudice against a Black woman, it's prejudice against a Black gay woman, it's prejudice against a Black gay woman from a lower social class. It's this layering of prejudice that needs, breaking down. It's much more complex. And I think Jenny alluded to it, some of us started at climate crisis, but all this stuff is what feeds it. It's the kind of root causes. So we can't just focus on carbon reduction. You got to get down to the causes, and somewhere down deep, murky depths of this stuff, it's down at the intersectionality or the racism. Yes, Murray, thank you for being patient with me.
I was just going to say thank you to the folks in my group who talked about experience of what you may or may not have said or done in the past, and I think that's one of the things. It's about being brave and honest and courageous and owning who you are and where you've come from. And that's the sort of thing, because I was watching Robin DiAngelo last night, and there's this massive edifice we are up against. This edifice is a wall, and you are the brave one who doesn't go along with that little racist comment, or doesn't allow that little, misogynistic, the whole thing about young boys and that girl that got murdered was all about boys in school and university age just sort of challenging assumptions by their friends. And that takes bravery and courage, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So thanks.
Thank you. Yeah. I'm going a bit of a side, but I've got a film recommendation, and it's been recommended for a while for me, and I kind of watched it on Saturday, and it's The Trial of the Chicago 7. Has anyone seen that? I mean, it's not overtly about racism, but there is the absolutely incredible example of it at play right at the top level of the what is structural racism. You see it in that film, and it's also an absolutely brilliant movie. It's Aaron Sorkin, the guy did West Wing. Did he do The Sopranos as well? Sorkin, does anybody know? Anyway, it's on Netflix, and it's just brilliant. And why I'm saying that in response to Murray is there was a classic example of somebody standing up you know, for a view when all the odds are stacked against them in that film. They kind of found that bit of yourself that says just step that extra step to speak up, and it does need that, you know, to however we find our space to do it, and we also have to manage it afterwards, you know, how we feel afterwards when, you know, maybe we have spoken up. Sometimes it's exhilarated, sometimes it's completely flattened, but that's not the point. They call them microaggressions, don't they? Those little things that, oh yeah, it's not important, but I've heard, you know, black people talk about it. It's the microaggressions that do the damage. There was a film we were going to show today. It's a comedian sort of saying it's you know, it's not the people with the white things on and the eye holes that we worry about. It's all these little comments and little jibes that are death by 1,000 cuts that kind of add up to, you know, institutionalized racism, actually. Is anybody else any other thing to respond to or to want to add before we finish? We've got, I think, 5 minutes left or so. Yeah, I've got 5 minutes left. Anyone?
Just there was a term used which was a Ubuntu.
Oh yeah.
Which I hadn't come across before. I don't know if anybody knows a little more about it. It sounded very.
Do you want to say anything, Jenny? Ubuntu.
I don't know. Ubuntu, I don't know much more about it aside from it's South African, and it is what I said it was. I am because you are, we are because I am, or the other, you know, both ways round.
Yeah, I might say it is, and it's often used as a, you know, like it's when you meet somebody, so it's a kind of acknowledgement of the human, you know, within us all, so that it gets away from the othering. It's really powerful, actually. I had a friend who I mentioned it to, and he'd moved into Brixton, and he'd mentioned it to this person of colour who was selling big issues, and got into this wonderful conversation around the spirit of Ubuntu. So we kind of seeing ourselves as, you know, it's kind of relates to Thich Nhat Hanh's Into Being, you know, the interconnectedness of us all and going beyond as kind of identity problem that we have. I think that's it, more or less. But it goes go way back. Yes, Jenny.
Just to say, I don't know if anybody noticed that Mama D's pronouns were we and us, and I think that's exactly what she was doing with that.
Yeah.
And it's not I or they, it's we and us.
Yeah, wonderful. Okay, so shall we just sit for 2 minutes to finish and then say goodbye? Is that okay with everyone? Just I won't guide or anything. I'll just ring the bell and we can just let ourselves settle and then say goodbye.